Hello, this is Vance, and this is Friday, February the 3rd, 2017. These are the CL trades for today using the slow hand method for price action. Well, I'm going to do something a little different today. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about the setup for this trade and a couple other things, but what I have is that I have this trade right here. Now, I don't have the trade in the vocal, so I'll vocalize it afterwards when I'm showing it to you. But I had this area right here, right from the very beginning, from when I sat down here. I wasn't going to do this. I was going to record the whole day and try to edit it out and do that kind of stuff, but I decided not to. But what I did do is that I happened to be in the trade when this thing developed. And I'll tell you why I took the trade and what my thinking was. And well, the first thing is I put a trade on right here on this bar. Now, the reason I did this is that from the overnight, after we had the overnight session, right at well, it hadn't opened up yet. This is 9 o'clock is right here. This is 9 o'clock right here. So this is 9. This is where the market opens. But up until then, if you notice, we had this decline overnight. We had a fairly tight range. So we had a range from between, I guess, about 50, just about 54 down to 53.65, 53.60, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we had really, it's about 70, 80 ticks in this. But this whole drop right here took place really right at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 to 4 o'clock. So this was a real, so if you notice, when price opened here, it came pulled up, it really, you see this from this bottom here, comes down, tests, goes higher. This is mostly overnight. This is the night sessions. It drops down to this area, and then it starts to range. And it ranges from this area here to this area. Okay? So what am I thinking? Well, my thoughts were, and why I took this trade here. This is, I was here about 8:30 or so. I was watching this come down here. Price looks like it's moving down here, but then we had this bounce. Price comes down here, like a retest of this area right here. Now, I wasn't really concerned with this, but there was a retest of this area. So what I was looking at is going long. And when I looked at it, here's my 15-tick stop box. My long was below this. I wasn't really over concerned with that because that was maybe just shot down. But I wanted my stop to be underneath here with the expectation that I could get out. It was at 74. So I got in at 74, and it was just enough room to get to these tops. So it had to get, that's right to here. You see this? It had to get through here. But it didn't. You see what happened? Price got up to this area. It got to 70, pardon me, it got to 86. So I was 12 ticks ahead before price turned down. Now this happened really at 8:40. That's when I got in this trade. It started to rotate here. You can see it touched the area and then started coming in. This was right at 9 o'clock. So my stop at this time, because this was taking so long to complete, I moved my stop to break even, and I got taken out. Now, that's not the important part about it. That's why I took this trade. But as I was sitting here and I watched this, now I'm going to look at whether or not, see how price reacts down at this area. I want to see how it's going to react in this area. And you can see on the tape that I was looking at my stop areas. In other words, what I was doing is that I was lining up these 15-tick stop boxes to figure where the buzz. Now, I don't have any of this stuff. You don't have this yet. I'm looking at, can I get into a trade and have my first targets below these double tops, which were now these double tops. So I'm looking at limiting in here. And what happens? Well, it doesn't give me an opportunity. Price comes up here, and then kind of the bottom falls out of it. And what I mean by that is that this is 9 o'clock right here. You can see that this is 9 o'clock. I'll just show this to you. This is 9 a.m. So when price opens, it drives down, hesitates, moves down here. This whole magnitude of this move took down to here. It moved 27 ticks in less than a minute, 58 seconds. It hesitates in this area. You can see it takes like a few minutes, and then it moves again. And it moves from here down to the very bottom right here in a minute and 47 seconds. So basically, if you look at it, this was a roughly 43 tick move, a 44 tick move from the open down, and it took roughly 2 minutes, somewhere in that neighborhood, just a little bit more than 2 minutes, except for the hesitation in the middle. Now, why was I looking at this trade? Well, the first thing I was looking at, or the reason I was looking at this trade as a long, these trades, this trade right here and this trade right here broke through where previous support was by a number of ticks, probably, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 25 ticks, 30 ticks, somewhere in that neighborhood. But then immediately we had this pullback. And this hesitation here, so if you look at the magnitude of these moves were roughly, just say 2 minutes. Price starts to bounce around here, and this is 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. So what I'm thinking is that looking back at the previous days, and I'll take a look at that, I looked at the chart from the previous days, and I'm looking at this area here. I'm looking at an area over here, and the yesterday's bouncing, and as a result I was looking at maybe there's an entry in this area, because I think that if you look at this chart, you can look where price has been revisited a couple times. We were ahead here, comes back down, it bounces, moves up. This is yesterday afternoon and so forth. So I was anticipating that this was perhaps the low area from yesterday and today, and it turns out that once price found its solid base, my stop is low enough, and my stop was down here. I got in on that trade, and right away it really moved in my direction. My first target came off right here. Like, it took a little while to get off. Price first comes off, it pulls back, and I had my stop at break even, and I rode the rest of this till it got to this area right in here. Now, I looked at this previous area as a high, and I looked at this area right here as there probably was going to be some resistance right across here in this neighborhood. And it looks like it happened right in this area. So I wound up closing out my trade. I think I got 80. No, I just checked my sheets. It's at 90. So I got taken out at 90. And you can see when price spiked up here, I moved it to 90. And I'll run the trade, and then I'll wrap up for the day. So you can take a look at that. Okay? So we'll take a look at that now. Okay, you see this where I'm just doing this voice narration right now. You can see where I was talking earlier about getting into this trade. And see how my boxes are set up? I've set up these boxes to show where my stop should be and where my target would be. And this hasn't been changed from when I got in on this trade right here. So now I'm looking at maybe a particular setup down near the bottom of this range. I still have the idea that price wants to go up. That's what my belief is. And this is so this is very close to the open. It's actually, the price is open right now. It's after 9 o'clock. And so I'm just waiting here to see how it's going to respond if it gets down to these lower areas here. Well, where I see that this is double bottoms, triple bottoms along this bottom. And you can see right here, I'm looking at this. It's bouncing, not ready to take a trade at the moment, so I'm just leaving it the way it is, and I'm going to check on that as it gets closer. So now we see that the price has moved. Now it's moved a little bit down lower, and now I want to see if how it's going to react at these various areas. So I haven't moved my stop. I'm not taking a trade at this point in time. I'm looking at perhaps a short is in order, and only looking at a short trade if I can get a decent bar, like a bear bar, to look at going short with an adequate stop. Because the first thing I'll look at is my stop. And the only time I can see a stop loss being adequate in something like this is that if we're on a strong trend and there's an obvious area of resistance higher than where I am. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's anything is playing out right now. These bars are too thin. I'm not really keen on the follow through. There's no follow through at this point in time, and there isn't really a hint of follow through. In fact, price looks like it's kind of pulling back somewhat, and that's why I'm reluctant to get into this trade going short at this point. So I'm waiting to see how it transpires. Okay, now I'm adjusting my bars. I went and looked back. I'm just checking to see where the bottom of this could very well be as far as support is concerned. And here I'm checking the previous days, and particularly looking at where a bounce could be on the chart. And so, as you can see, I'm moving my stop boxes around. I'm moving my areas of support and resistance around, thinking that is there going to be an entry to develop here? Now, my one thought is that if I'm going to get long on this trade, I want to make sure that my stop loss is below today's and yesterday's high. So it's more along the lines of, if I can see any hint of support, I'm going to get on this trade. In other words, what I see here is that it's the old adage that you buy weakness and you sell support. Well, I think that in this move here, off the open, price is this indication of weakness. So it's an early morning drive down. The key is that this is where I think price is going to stay for the rest of the day. Well, I wasn't convinced of that, particularly with this move, this last move, and the move before in the overnight being very dramatic in nature. In other words, likely institutions or likely a large amount of contracts coming in to drive price down. I think that once there was some consolidation at the lower levels, that price would in fact go higher. So as a result, I was looking more along the lines of getting in. Now this first bar, and it's a bear bar, a bull bar, and it did bounce. I wasn't really interested in looking at getting in there. And so I'm waiting for this next bar. So what I'm saying is that even though this does represent a second entry, it's too early, in my opinion, at this point. So I'm just kind of taking it easy and looking at where a decent entry would be. And where did I like the trade? I like the trade after price kind of probed down there a little bit and immediately bounced right here. And you can see this on this bar. It bounces, it pulls back, and it leaves it turns out to be like a dragonfly doji. This is what this is. It's a dragonfly doji insofar as, see, price probe down and then tries to pull up. And here I'm looking at where's my stop going to be. So I'm getting ready to pull this trigger on this trade if I get a favorable bar. I'm looking at least a bounce. I think that if price starts to solidify and heads up in that direction, I think that at the very least I can get my first contracts off. And that's what I'm really thinking. I'm only thinking my first contracts. And do I have favorable risk-reward ratio? And this is where I pull the trigger on it. So I pull the trigger on the trade. I put my boxes in there. I can see my stop loss. I can see my I can see where the rest of it is. And then as soon as I put the trade on, instead of waiting through, I go live. And this is what I was talking about first thing this morning. Good morning, this is Vance, and this is Friday, February the 3rd, 2017. These are the CL trades for today using the slow hand method for price action. I'm in this trade at the bottom of this channel. I saw this was breakdown from 9 o'clock. I think we're expecting a turnaround here. Well, at least I am expecting a turnaround. Look at where this previous support has been. This is like this is the day before yesterday, last evening. This is yesterday. This is yesterday afternoon. And I think we're going to bounce again here. So I think that price is going to be heading higher. And so this is really a case of me buying weakness. I'm buying this weakness after the open. So I'm thinking we're going to rotate back up here by 30 ticks. So that's what I've got on here. Now, first entry, second entry right here. Price dips back down. The first level was first, and then we had this bounce out of here. So that's why I got in on this trade right at this juncture. First target's going to be off just before it gets to this area of previous support. And really, this is really kind of like a spike down here. And I think that's got to do with the fact that, some selling participants came into the market. I'll be watching this closely. I want to see some a real bounce here and some real follow through. But I'm going to also give it some room to go anyway. So that's where I am. I'm willing to pay 15 ticks on 3 contracts to find out whether or not my thesis is correct as far as price heading going to be higher, heading toward the 54 mark, where it's been trading really quite for the last day. This area right in here. In fact, it was a little bit higher than that yesterday. It's at 54.34. And so that's why I'm on this trade. So I think I'm buying weakness at this juncture. Okay, it's we got to a high of, let's take a look, 57, 4 ticks away from 61, which is my first contract. Why am I not moving it? I'm waiting on this thing. I'm giving it the room. I mean, arguably, I can move this up. I mean, I can move up to here. Right to this, under this here. Under this, what I see the support here. So, now I've got right under here. So it's 40. I'm at 38. That's fine. If price comes down here, rotates back down to this area, then I'll feel that this move isn't ready to go at this juncture. And I'll look for another trade. Whether that trade's going to be long or short, I don't know at this point. I have to say that I still have a long bias at this juncture, even with this slight pullback on this bar. But it only stands to reason that there probably is going to be some hesitation right across this area right here. We had a bit of a bounce. So in this area, which looks like maybe a little bit lower right there, it's not under. The question is whether this hesitation or whether the sellers are going to step in to drive price down and hit my stop. That's what I'm looking at. So I don't know. But I'm willing to pay at this point in time 12 ticks per contract to find out whether that's all right. I think the structure is still okay. I think this may be just a slight pullback. I think this is just noise. If I knew that this is going to come down and take my stop out, then I would have moved it to break even. I don't know that. So I'm willing to leave it the way it is to see if this is, in fact, the weakness that I anticipate. Now, these bars I'm not too happy about these two bars. I mean, you can't be. I would rather see this trade as soon as I put it on go straight to my targets. But that's how often is that going to happen? That doesn't happen often. I have to look at, am I prepared to pay the price on this trade to find out whether or not my thesis or my expectation is the correct position? That's all there is to it. If this bar closed down, I may move this to break even. If this closes down, unless we have a turnaround on this bar to somewhat of a more positive bar, I'm probably going to close this to move this to break even and wait for another entry. Well, as you can see, I'm staying in this trade, and because this bar was positive, as I mentioned, and so I'm staying with it. I'm in it to win it. Okay, first contract's off. Move it to break even. And my next contract's at 76. And let it go. Okay, that's target 2. Just moving this up. Hesitation right at this area here. I don't know how much further it'll go. But I've got it at 41, so, or pardon me, at 53.91. Will it break 54? Not sure. Okay, I'm going to move it up a little bit further. I took the contract there. It's enough. I've got to get going, so that's it for today. It's like 10:15. This is Vance. Bye for now. Okay, there you have it. That's the rest of the trade. This is the rest of the day. And hope you got something out of that. And you hear not only my narration when I first started, but you also heard my thoughts about as far as the trade is concerned. So that's it for now. You have any questions? If you there's still some room for the mindful trading program. People have made some requests. I've sent out a number of other packages. I encourage you to send in your application form. You might be surprised. Anyways, send in the application form if you've made a request. I've had some people that haven't sent them back in yet. So send it in, and that way we can we'll discuss it after you send it in. But I can't do anything until you send that information in. In other words, the most important part of that entire package is the non-disclosure confidentiality agreement. I won't talk to anybody unless I have that thing signed. So unless you have that thing signed, I'm not going to talk to you about anything, about the program, the length, any of those sorts of things. So there's no harm. You can still say no to the program. I won't be speaking to you about anything in particular unless I get that signed non-disclosure agreement form and the confidentiality agreement. Those are the two. I mean, I'd like to know about some background as well, because that's part of the package. But those are the two most important forms. I won't be speaking to you about any of the program itself, the nuts and bolts of it, unless I have those forms back. Okay? Consider it discretionary, I suppose, more than anything else. This is Vance. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.